Hey everyone, welcome back to another live free critique session. I'm Michael Klein and we're at East Oak Studio. If you are joining us live, welcome. We're excited to have you. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to fill out the form below the video and email us at info@eastoakstudio.com. So what we're doing here is essentially we're inviting artists to email us high-res images of their artwork so we can look at it and select from a group of painters paintings that we would like to potentially paint on here at the studio, because I think there's a difference in being able to show someone something with the physicality of the actual painting as opposed to using Photoshop or doing it online. So this is fun for us to provide free content for you all. So when I look at this painting, this session, we have a beautiful little still life painting by Divya Melaluka, and she's an artist here in Raleigh. She's from Australia, and she worked with Odd Nerdrum, and essentially she's self-taught for if I were to kind of group her in a school, but very influenced by her current boyfriend Alex Venecia and all of the artists here at East Oaks. So what I want to do is just kind of go through some of the obvious things that when I look at a painting, if I'm in a workshop, I sit down and I try to give just some helpful insights into the practicality of making a painting potentially ready for a gallery. So there's always kind of a checklist of things in my mind that I just have to go through and make sure things are making sense. So on this painting, the first thing that stands out to me is the table line, and it's a common mistake. I do it myself, and we just have to make sure that it's level and goes through the painting straight across, and so that affects everything else we're going to be doing. So if I just quickly kind of think about addressing this, I create a value scale here on my palette. I look at where I want things to go. If I want this to come up slightly, I can just raise that a little bit. This one off to the left, I can raise this slightly. And then over here, this painting is fairly dry, so I don't have to be super careful. I'm using oleo gel to apply this paint. So she's got a nice reflection of the wall in the back that I want to be particular about and respectful of. So if you've ever, I'm not a huge fan of selfies, but the selfie stick is really awesome. You can just use that as a mall stick and carry it with you wherever. But continuing on with this, just quickly, I want to try to address the table line. Could go up slightly higher. And then over here, I'm going to have it come down a little bit. Looks like it's warmer. And then later on, as we finish up the video, I'll let you guys ask some questions and I'll address them at the end. So again, just thinking about, like, if I'm going to present this to a gallery and I'm thinking about the audience and what the audience is looking at, this is a beautiful little painting, and we look at it from an artist's perspective, but everyone else looking at it will be very kind of analytical, and they'll just walk up to a beautiful work of art and say that the table's off or something like that. And so that kind of thing is just as you kind of get used to sending paintings out to galleries and whatnot, you're aware of that. And another thing would be some of the ellipses, and we probably won't have time to go through all of that, but those are just kind of checklists that you can do and make it just a little bit better. So now, moving on from that, I'm thinking about some of these areas of high contrast where you have this form that's happening, it's turning away from your eye, it's receiving bounce light from the table, the wall bouncing in the table, bouncing back up to the vase. So when I look at that, and I look at this area that's the wall that's being bounced off the top of the table, that just creates too much of a contrast. My eye goes there. It's not a focal point. I don't want it to be a focal point. So I want to, just kind of suggest that there's air around this area, and then also that maybe think about this cast shadow, even though the surface of the table is, it's reflective and the point of contact for the vase is here. I still think that there will be something happening through there. So I want to just quickly adjust the values on that as well. And being that I'm kind of over here in my shadows, I'll mix up some cool darks and basically just kind of drag them over the top, imagining that if there was light bouncing up and hitting it, that's a way to again address the last critique I did. I was talking about atmosphere in the background. This one I didn't go in and oil out the whole thing because I was worried that it may not be dry. But it's the same idea of seeing how all these objects interact with one another. So here, just coming in, thinking about adding some oil, potentially doing a little bit of a glaze through here, this surface. So I'm just lightening that up, bringing the value a little bit lighter in areas, potentially a little bit darker here. And the thing that is really nice about, right now I'm not looking at anything. I'm thinking about these corrections from a standpoint of what is the painting telling me? When we go into a museum, we're looking at these paintings and the artist is telling a story to the viewer. And essentially you have to learn how to read your painting as a work of art, and what is that work of art, how is it speaking to you? When we encounter these little subtle errors that are, it happens all the time and it's not a big deal. It's very common that there would be a contrast that's too harsh, or that can start to take away from this story of we have these objects on the table, the light is coming across them, it's illuminating them in a way that is very beautiful. So how do we emphasize that while we're painting or what we're thinking about? And so that was one part of the contrast. Now I'm going to go in here and finish up the other side. I may glaze a little bit more. I want that to really feel like it's sitting on the table. So this area of cast shadow, this is so close to the point at which it's touching, I think that it would extend out slightly and allow that to be, there would be an area where this is still going to receive a little bit of dark back there. And I think of this, if this is reflecting on the surface there, then I want that and that to be the same tone because it's the same surface. So if this contrast then is being popped in a way that's different than this, it would be suggesting that there's a different kind of surface, or a different light effect happening, which there wouldn't be. So this is going to come down as well, down in value. And then allowing some of the light to bounce back up into the vase again, just because that's going to be a little bit more subtle, probably, the transition as it turns back. And the edge can go soft. Okay, I'm a little worried about the same kind of thing happening here, so I just will think if the light is coming, hitting that, I'm going to lighten this up just a touch. Because then as it turns this way, it's receiving less light as it goes down. There's a gradation happening from this. Even though it's going down that way, it's also going down this way. Maybe do just a little bit more up here. And then I'm going to take the background color and soften that edge. All right, so that's getting my eye to come over here to come to kind of the beautiful stuff that's happening through here. So we don't want anything to distract us from our kind of our purpose. And so as my enters in here, I feel like this dark oval is just a little bit harsh, and it almost has an effect of a black hole where all of the light is being lost or absorbed or whatever happens in a black hole. But I feel like there would be just a little bit of a bounce light, things happening in there, potentially a little bit of the ambient light hitting here. So then I also think about the back edge. This would be receiving almost as much shadow as this. So then this would come down darker here. So that's kind of tying this shape together. And I'm going to go in and lighten up some of this stuff in here. So this is very generous of Divya to be able to allow us all to learn from her painting journey. This is, it's part of the process. She's doing an excellent job. She's been full-time for about a year, I think, and so advancing very quickly. And so this is fun for me to be able to do this for her, and also for all of you to be able to join us. So let's see. Still thinking about just how dark that is. I want to, if I had a little piece of, sometimes I scrape the surface to get back down to what's underneath, and then I'll apply the dark so I can get that translucent. I don't know if I'll be able to. I may need some sandpaper. So as I'm applying this, it's kind of an opaque, it's a scumble rather than a glaze. Take some oil so this doesn't look sunken in. Knock that edge down a bit. All right, So then moving on, see I'm getting past that now and I want to touch this area a little bit. So there are some greens and violets in this, and it's kind of a broken shimmering effect. And so I just still want to try to think about the overall, the crash of light that's coming into the painting. Right now this is feeling a little bit dark, similar to this. So if I mix up some of that green color, so I'm just going to take green, violet, maybe some brown, and then I'm going to test it and drag the brush across the surface so that it creates kind of a broken effect. And so I'm just bringing some of these greens through here and allowing that form to then turn slightly a little bit more, opening it up a little bit more to the light. I'm using the side of my Rosemary and Company brush, the Michael Klein set. So I'm using the side of it because the ferrule of the brush and where the hairs insert doesn't have any paint on it. So if you think about the gradation from here to the tip, usually the tip is loaded with paint, but the side isn't. So if I think about how I want to lay this paint on, right now there's nothing going on, but if I put the pressure on the brush here, then it's going to load it on in a different way. So sometimes I'll push around, I'll scumble the paint on the surface with the end of the brush. So see how this is now allowing that vase to breathe some of the same kind of air as this here. A little bit is happening up here. It's an extremely common thing to want to look at the background value and this, and you relate this to that, and it always goes just slightly too dark. If I'm thinking about this surface, the light coming in, hitting this, I can imagine that there would be some light skimming along this thing here and then hitting this surface and lightening up a little bit, coming up in value just slightly. So that's just a common in a lot of paintings. You know, when you go through a workshop and critique people, it's there's a lot of similar kind of problems in people's work, and so another one would be organization of palette. I have a video on YouTube of some color mixing, but I don't think I address the organizational component of like just understanding how your palette works and having, so this color harmony here would represent this object and this color harmony here would, you know, so you keep things organized. Grabbing some of the plum color and going in and just allowing that same light effect to have the light hit the edge. All right, so the last thing I'll do is come over here for the leaves, and I'm thinking maybe just a little bit more of as I go a skim eye around, I would maybe want to emphasize this a little bit more and pull this down slightly. Same way, how does trickle of light come through here? Or how do I want it to come through here and affect the painting? So I'll grab some burnt sienna, raw umber, yellow, make a little bit of a string, and I'm just going to hit this with some dirt, because usually leaves are, you know, dirty, they got stuff on them, there's a lot of broken color. This is going to tuck under. And then over here, the side of that one, Maybe just be catching a little bit of rim light. Sorry. She suggested it just ever so slightly. I would maybe beef it up a little bit more. Soften the edge slightly. This dark, maybe a little bit too dark. This may be a little bit too light. I'll just soften that. Oh, and also the stem. So come through here and accentuate just the light effect on that stem. It shares the same light source, you know, it's all part of this. Let's see. I'm going to knock this down slightly, and then I think it'd be nice to have just a little bit of the highlight on the stem. You decide if it looks awkward, you know, you can take it out. All right, let's see, maybe this green color could be bouncing in here. So go back to the color of the mixture that I did in the jar, and just I'm gonna apply it differently though. I'm just gonna apply it with some oil and a horizontal. Some dark here, so that light is coming from back there. And the last thing, just touch that a little bit. All right, well, so that, to me, it would be 4 or 5 of the things that I would maybe choose to do if I were just painting on this, trying to finish it up for sending it off. So I hope you enjoyed it, and now we'll answer a few questions if there are any from the viewing audience. Joe, you got any questions? You wanna? No? Alex, can you grab my phone? Thanks, buddy. All right. If anyone wants to send a quick question, we can. We're live, so that's an advantage to this format. We want to provide some free content, but at the same time, we also want to answer your questions. So, if you want to send in a question to info@eastoakstudio.com, that would be great. Also, and I'll just take the opportunity to mention kind of the vision of the company and what we're doing and what's available. This month we have a pre-sale happening for Jeffrey T. Larson. He did an incredible still life video. I highly recommend it. I think it's like about five hours long. We went out to Duluth, Minnesota at the Great Lakes Academy of Art, and filmed it there. So that was particularly unique experience for us and Jeff. We also have a incredible drawing video by Teresa Owaka and a beautiful still life video from Carlo Russo. So